Hey there, grade 8. Good morning or afternoon, whichever it is for you. So this is going to be lesson 1 of chapter 2. So today we're actually starting on integers, and we're using models to multiply integers. All right. So I'm going to use the same question but different integers for the whole time. So the question that I'm going to be using is I'm going to be saying 3 times 5. And my 3 times 5 is going to change. So I'm going to do positive 3 times positive 5. I'm going to do positive 3 times negative 5. I'm going to do negative 3 times positive 5. And then negative 3 times negative 5. All right? So we're going to go through all the possible ways that we're going to do this. And this, I have to apologize right now. This lesson will be a little bit longer. But you know what? I've got the help of a couple of my friends that I just made. So it might be a little bit more fun than normal. So when we're looking at integers, I know that they can seem scary. And in my opinion, the multiplication and the division of integers are actually a lot easier than addition and subtraction, because there's set rules that we follow, and I know from previous years that some students actually like to just try to apply those rules for addition and subtraction, but it doesn't always work. So let's start with, we have positive 3 times positive 5, or 3 times 5, which you've done, since grade 4 when you started multiplication. So we're going to take our blue guy, because our blue guy is our positive guy. Okay, so he's starting at 0, and he's making, so just a reminder that multiplication is basically constant addition. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're actually doing 3 jumps of 5. Okay, 3 jumps of positive 5. And it's positive 3, so we're moving in the positive direction. So here we're doing 1 jump, 2 jumps, 3 jumps. All right, so he's moving forward because he's moving in the positive direction. Okay, if I'm to look at the second one, so our answer here that we got positive 15. Or you could just say 15. Okay, if you don't have a symbol, we just assume it's 15. If it's going to be negative, we have to put our symbol. All right, let's look at the second one. We have positive 3 times negative 5, which means we have our positive guy. He's making 3 jumps. But which direction is he moving in? Well, he's moving in the negative direction. So we're here, and he's going 1, 2, 3. Okay? How did that work? Well, we have a negative 5, which means he's moving backwards. Okay? So basically kind of what we're looking at is we're saying the way that they're facing, okay, the way that they're facing is determined by the first symbol. Okay, so they're facing the positives or they're facing the negatives. So in this case, he's facing the positives, but he's moving backwards. 1, 2, 3. All right. So we end up getting negative 15. Okay. Now, we're starting with our negative guy. So we've got negative 3. He's here. Okay. And what's he doing? He's walking forward positive 5s, okay? So he's facing the negative, so we have our negative guy, and he's walking forward. So 1, 2, 3, because this is forward for him. That's the direction that he's facing. I know it might be hard to tell, but you can't really see his face, but his feet are telling us which way he's actually facing, as opposed to the blue guy who's facing towards the positives. Our red is facing towards the negatives. So once again, he's facing towards the negatives, and he's moving forward. 1, 2, 3 jumps of 5. So we also get a negative 15. Okay. Now, we have our negative guy once again. So we have our negative 3, and he's moving backwards. Okay, he's moving backwards sets of 5. 1, 2, 3. So he ends up here at positive 15. Okay. So, we're not going to get into rules yet. That's going to be the next lesson. But just kind of a refresher, basically kind of what we're saying, the direction that they're facing, so whether we're using our red guy or our blue guy, is determined by the first integer. Okay, so here we have positives for these first two, so we're using the blue. Here we have negatives for the next two, so we're using red. Okay, then the second integer says which direction they're moving, forwards or backwards. Okay, so if we have our blue guy and he's moving forward, he's going to hop forward. If we have our blue guy and he's moving backwards, he's going to hop backwards. Okay, if we have our red guy and he's moving forwards, he's coming to the negative. If he's moving backwards, he's going to the positive. Okay, so that's way number one, using a number line. There's another way that we can do it, and we can do that using integer tiles, okay, which I know is everybody's favorite. Okay, so we're going to talk about each of these as well. So what do we have here? So once again, we're talking about using the repeated addition method. All right, so when we have positive 4 times positive 3, we're basically saying we have 3 groups of 5. So my blue is going to be my positive. So I'm just going to do little circles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that is what that looks like. Okay, we have 3 groups of positive 5. Okay, if I look at my next one, I'm saying 3 times negative 5. So I have 3 groups of negative 5. So it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we can clearly see that with this one, I'm getting my positive 15. With this one, I'm getting my negative 15. Okay, now you're going to ask, well, Mr. Nick, that makes sense for those first two when my first number is positive. But what happens when my first number is negative? What do I have to do? Okay, well, when we're thinking about it that way, what we technically need to do is we need to start with these 0 pairs. All right, so if I start with my 0 pairs, I'll go like this. Okay, so there's my 15 positives, and then this will be my 15 negatives. Okay, so my first example is saying negative 3 times positive 5, which means I am removing 3 groups of positive 5. So if I'm removing 3 groups of positive 5, that would be this one is going to be gone, this one is going to be gone, and this one. So all 3 of these are leaving. And I'm left with my negative 15. Okay? So negative times the positive. So I'm taking away 3 groups of positive 5. So from my 0 pairs, and I could draw more 0 pairs, it doesn't matter, because there's technically an infinite number of 0 pairs. What I'm removing my positives. Okay? So let's see what happens in the last example. Okay, I'll have to redraw my positive integers here quickly. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, the last example is saying negative 3 times negative 5. So I'm removing 3 groups of negative 5. So I'm removing 3 groups of negative 5. So there's 1 group of negative 5, another group of negative 5, and 3 groups of negative 5. So these ones are being removed. Okay, what's left? Well, I've got my positive 5, 10, 15. So I'm left with positive 15. So no matter which way that I kind of do this process, it ends up working correctly that as I'm working it. So I've got, I'll go over it one more time. So I've got 2 methods. If I'm talking about a number line, okay, the first number is which direction they're facing. The second number is which direction they're moving. Okay, so if I'm facing positive, I'm moving forward, it's a positive times a positive. If I'm facing positive and I'm moving backwards, it's a positive times a negative. If I'm facing the negatives and I'm moving forwards, okay, that's going to be a negative times a positive. If I'm facing backwards or towards the negative and I'm walking backwards, that's going to be a negative times a negative. Okay, when we're talking about using integers, okay, if you got a positive, you're adding groups of however many. Okay, and then you're adding, if it's positive or negative, then you're adding those. When you're talking about a negative first, you're actually removing those groups. Okay, so I'm removing those groups of however many there are, whether it's positive or negative, and I'm usually left with the opposite. All right? So you guys are going to have time to play around with some questions, kind of get the idea of multiple addition and all that stuff. If you have any problems, please bring those questions that you may have to the Zoom chat. You can always message me on Google Hangouts, and I'll be happy to answer your questions there. All right, good luck, everybody.